Hey guys, Michael here with Conquest Overland, coming to you with our very first Q&A episode, and I could not be more excited to host this. All the questions that came in across all our social media platforms were simply fantastic, and I can't wait to kind of go into some of the details of behind the scenes of kind of what makes Conquest Overland function, as well as how I kind of prepare for trips, the gear I use, what's been my inspiration, all that good stuff. So I sincerely appreciate everybody who submitted their questions. It's amazing to see the community that we've kind of reached so far, and those who are kind of interested to learn a little bit more. But with that, welcome to the home office here. This is where I spend a large amount of my time, not only from days I work remotely from work, but also where I am head into the computer doing all my editing, trip planning, all that good stuff. So large amount of time to spend in here, but I've kind of suited it to not only have some nice little photos for added inspiration, but different little things just to keep me busy, but also be functional at the same time. So welcome nonetheless. But we're just going to dive right in here, and we're going to kind of address everybody's questions on the different platforms. So from Patreon to Facebook, Instagram, and then YouTube community as well. But we'll start with our Patreon folks, and to all those who submitted their questions, not only thank you for doing so, but thank you to all our Patreon members for your generous support. It sincerely means a lot, so thank you very much. But we're just going to kick it off here and start. So Walker, our Patreon member, you are up on deck first, and his question is, what is the next big thing you have planned for Yeti, and do you have any fun trips planned coming up or plan to venture out of state soon? So as far as the build with Yeti goes, the Toyota Tacoma, for those who don't know, I don't think a build is ever complete. We're always adding, changing, or finding better improvements to make things more functional or efficient. So I don't think there'll ever be a day where I'm finished with it, though I feel like I'm pretty close right now. I would say as far as build items go to add in, I would love to incorporate like a drawer system on as a seat delete, a homemade one that I'm looking at connecting with a good friend of mine to do, and we'll have it behind the passenger seat. And what it'll do is it will serve all the galley dry food items in just random storage, because as it currently sits, I have the Domestic fridge in the back seat behind the passenger, and what I want to do is put it on a platform where it can sit more level, but then also have a drawer underneath it where I can have all my galley items accordingly. And the reason being is basically everything with the kind of the new setup on the truck, everything deploys off that passenger side. So the awning, the tent, and me accessing the fridge from the rear door, it just kind of makes sense to keep all those items there, and then at the same time I don't have a random storage bin kind of floating around just for dry goods. So that's kind of the goal in that aspect. However, I've also been looking at doing some area lighting with rock lights. So I don't do too much off-road stuff on trails a lot at night where I feel like I need rock lights. But what I would love to have as a side benefit from them is just general area light that they also provide. So a lot of the time, those systems and how the lights hook up to the vehicle via like a Switch Pro or something similar, they all have Bluetooth capability to your phone. And what it would be nice is when I'm at camp, having that light, I could go on my phone and essentially just turn on the lights as needed. But then what they could provide is a nice area light, so when you're cooking or just walking, grabbing gear, things like that, you don't always have to have a headlamp. So it'd be cool to have that. I'm thinking maybe 2 near the front wheel traditionally, 2 near the rear wheel but then also maybe 2 extra in the center of the vehicle, kind of facing outward near the rock sliders. So that would be super cool to add in. We'll see when that's going to happen. I'm not sure. But as far as those 2 next modifications, that's kind of what is on the list so far. The follow-up question that he also had was just fun trips planned coming up or venturing out of state. What I would love to do is take on more of the BDR trails throughout the country. And for those who don't know, that's the backcountry discovery routes. You can find a lot of that information on ridebdr.com. And basically, it's a full website that showcases these off-road trails via Forest Service roads or fire roads that basically connect a large part of the entire state, all via off-road travel. So one that's on the list just because it's a neighboring state would be Idaho. I would love to get out there and do a trip and just explore that whole state. I've really haven't done too much besides just driving through it. So I would love to kind of get off the beaten path and check out some areas over there. A friend of mine lives in Wyoming, so I would love to get over there as I hear that they are soon to be releasing a BDR trail too. So would be an amazing experience to get over there and kind of visit more of their backcountry side. And then on top of that, as far as even out of state goes, I would love to get together with Alaska Overlander, similar to what Kevin and company did with Lifestyle Overland, and go out to Anchorage. And basically what their business is if you don't have the time to drive all the way out to Alaska and then continue your travels exploring the state, you can literally fly out to Anchorage, go to their shop, get the keys to a turnkey overland vehicle, and basically you're off and running, saving you a lot of time in vacation days, and you have everything you need right there. So for me, that would be perfectly up my alley as far as being able to save time, but still be able to get a really good trip out of it. So Alaska has definitely been on my list to do for quite some time, and I would love to get out there, see Denali, go to the peninsulas and all the towns and all that good stuff. So I would love to add that in one day, and what a better way to do it than, you know, having being able to link up with a business such as that. So otherwise, you know, keep going with the weekend trips, seeing how far we can explore in the 48-hour time frame that I traditionally have. But otherwise, those are kind of on the horizon, so we'll see what next year brings. Our next Patreon member, Nathan Anderson, he asks, what's your favorite brand and flavor of coffee to make in the morning? So typically I don't have a like a favorite brand that I always go to. Stumptown has definitely been one that I usually grab off the grocery shelf when we're out shopping. But otherwise, what I really like to do is, as we go on these trips, is explore the local areas that we're at. So for example, I was coming back from our company event with iKamper that we hosted in Southern California. I was driving up the West Coast on my way back home, and I stopped in Ashland, Oregon, which is pretty far south on the border of Oregon, and there was Case Coffee Roasters, and they were just a shop near the hotel that I was at, and stopped in for the morning caffeine boost, and they sold just whole bean bags of coffee as any traditional store would. But it was really great. You know, they had a great roast, great flavor profile. I'm not a coffee snob or anything by any means, but I would love to just kind of explore the local businesses and areas and help support them, but also just try new coffee that you typically can't get in the store. So they would be a perfect example as far as that goes. And I think I actually, in the last video here on our Travels Out to Vantage, showcased that bag. So if you look closely, you'll see it. But otherwise, that's what I kind of like to do, you know, as I travel and go about. Just find places like that, maybe stock up a little bit, and then keep trying them all. As far as flavored coffee goes, I traditionally try to just keep it as is. I don't typically go for like a hazelnut or anything, but medium to dark roasts are usually up the alley of what I look for in that regard. Josh, our next Patreon member, asks, any plans on a local meetup / trip? Have you thought about trying a community provided recipes while out on trips? And what are some things you do or use to clean gear, especially tent canvas, after trips? So a few parts there, so we'll address the first one here. Any plans on a local meetup or trip? So with that, I would absolutely love to, and it's definitely been something that I've been kicking around for a while, and I'll call myself out. I just need to do it. But what I would like to do is reserve it for those who support the channel, for our Patreon community. I really like to get something organized for you guys and be able to not only host a camp out, but do a little trail run action and just kind of explore the area some more together. Whether it's here in Washington or we meet up out of state, depending on time of year and everybody's availability. But I would really like to get that community together because you guys support, obviously, to help keep the channel going. So I feel like you guys would be first in line to make something like that happen, and maybe we'll open it up to everybody else after the fact. But yes, to answer the question, I would love to get something put together. So stay tuned as next year comes, so we can get something officially organized and on the calendar. His second question there was, have you thought about trying community provided recipes while out on trips? Absolutely. For those of you who've been following the channel, know that I'm not the best cook. I try, honestly, maybe that'll be my New Year's resolution in 2022, but usually that department's taken care of for me. I know I need to learn, but I've been able to benefit from those who I either go out on trips with or here at home. So I really need to learn a little bit more than just the prepackaged meals and things like that. So if you guys have homemade recipes or those that you feel would be worthwhile passing along that are fairly easy from a camp standpoint, definitely shoot me an email from the website or leave them in the comments or whatever. I would love to try them out and kind of showcase them all and see if we can revamp up the cooking segments on the episodes and make that a goal for next year. So definitely, please send them my way. His last one was things that I do to help clean the gear, especially the tent canvas after trips. For that, I'll be honest, I really don't do anything besides, if I go out when it's snowing or raining and the canvas of the tent itself just needs to dry. Obviously, priority is to make sure you get those things aired out and dry out completely before stowing them away. So you just don't worry about mold or anything like that. But as far as actual treatment to the canvas, I don't do anything to it. I've never felt or came across a situation as such where I felt like I had to. There's really no need unless something, I guess, happens to it. But most of the time, the canvas material has just held up in conjunction with the rain flies and things like that, where I haven't had an issue where I needed to specifically treat anything. So always, when you get back from trips, just make sure everything's aired out, dried out, and you're ready to rock and roll for the next outing. Moving down the list, and as you guys may have seen me glancing down, I have my phone here with all the questions so I can stay organized. But Daniel, our next Patreon member, he asks, do you plan to make a full-time job out of this? So we'll just start with his first question. To answer it, it would be cool if that happened. Am I actively pursuing that to make it happen? I would say no. And the reason being is I'm very, very fortunate and humbled and blessed to work in the profession that I do with iKamper. I'm very, very happy with my role there and being able to work with a company as such as that, but also be able to blend my profession with my passion. And I don't think a lot of people can say that and be able to fully be enveloped in this industry. I mean, I'll be honest, I eat, breathe, and live everything about this industry, and to be able to do that 24/7 with my career as well as on my own personal time is amazing. So I guess the need to pursue that hasn't been as present. Now, if you were to ask me that for any previous job, 100%, 100%, I would absolutely be doing everything I possibly could to get out of the 9-to-5 to make full-time travel a thing. Now, would that still be cool? Absolutely. I mean, I would love to get out more than just what my vacation days offer. But on the same token, I enjoy having, I guess, the security, if you will, or just being able to work with such a fantastic team and a great company, blending everything together, because the community that I've been able to engage with and connect with from that has just been simply incredible. And that's not only from the channel perspective, but also from my career as well too. So I guess there's really been no need from my initial standpoint to kind of pursue that. But should that organically happen, we'll kind of tackle that as the opportunity presents itself. Daniel's follow-up question also was, how do you prep for filming? Do you make a shot list or a script, so to speak? As far as prepping for filming, I really don't do too much prep work. I kind of let things naturally and organically just happen. I will maybe notes on my phone, just kind of make points of reference to talk about, whether it's like a new product that I kind of want to mention to you guys that I think might be helpful, maybe a new upgrade that I did to the truck, or maybe a new life event, or whatever it may be. Those type of things I'll maybe kind of just write down just to make sure that, hey, I should kind of mention this in a future episode. But as far as kind of specifically having a timeline from A to Z, I really don't. I let the story kind of tell itself and naturally and organically happen. So that way it just flows a little bit better than forcing a black and white perspective of, I have to make this, from this point of view. And I guess that also allows a little bit more creativity behind it too. When you're out there, you can let things naturally unfold and kind of sandboxing yourself in. So that's just kind of my take on it, but otherwise I'll make notes if there's something that I want to mention. Up next, Mark, Mark, you have quite a few questions, but we'll go through them all. But first, he asks, how did you get started? And did you have a ton of gear before beginning overlanding? So I guess I got started just in a progressional standpoint. Through Instagram, I was always kind of getting out, posting photos of hikes and trips and things like that, but it wasn't on the scale or caliber of videos and showing like a full-blown adventure perspective. So I started with that. I was inspired by those that I watch on YouTube to kind of get out and do more and maybe document it as well. But I also had coworkers too that would kind of, I guess, nudge me on to say, the photos are great, but why don't you kind of document it from a film perspective or a video and kind of share that? And I think, honestly, if you go on the channel now, I think it's actually one of the very first videos on the channel that I did, which was from that conversation that I filmed, and just kind of say, hey, I went out on a weekend trip and here it is. And that, I guess, is kind of how I started with it. And honestly, it just kind of grew from there. It really, I was able to kind of gain some momentum with starting the YouTube channel, keeping the videos going, hearing great feedback from everybody. And then it just kind of was like a snowball effect of just making the trips better, the production value better, investing in better equipment. And then it slowly just kind of went from there. It wasn't like an overnight thing of, hey, I'm going to start a YouTube channel and let me just dive into thousands of dollars worth of gear and make it happen. It was very, again, organic of how my approach was to it. So in that regard, I say when it comes to, do you need a ton of gear to do it? No. Honestly, when I started, I literally did everything on my cell phone. My phone literally was not only used for regular filming, I also used it for navigation with Gaia. And then when I later down the road, I bought my first drone, and that was also like the screen/controller for flying it. So my phone for early on was always plugged into a battery bank because it hovered around 10% of life just because of how much demand I was asking of it. So honestly, find what you need and go from there, and see where your story needs different tools to tell it. And that's how I've kind of grown from it. And that way you know what you need versus what you want. Your next question there, Mark, would you be willing to help people who want to get started, or a GoPro and an iPhone enough to get started filming, or do you have to have drones? So we kind of touched a little bit on it, but honestly, work with what you got. As I'm recording this, honestly, this is within days of me purchasing a second camera. So 1 and 2. And honestly, I've been running a single camera for a couple years now, and it's only recently that I felt like I needed another one for certain circumstances while I was out on the trail recording, where a second camera would be helpful. But in terms of just gear that you need, or do you need drones and things like that, I would say no, to be honest with you. You have to find what you feel for the story that you're telling would help in that aspect. So a good example, Chris with Venture Forward, I've been watching him pretty closely, and honestly, I don't think I recall any footage of drones, to be honest with you. He's able to tell the story with all organic sounds and commentary and shots, even doing so without music. So, you take that to scale, or look at somebody like Expedition Overland, who has pretty much everything under the sun, and rightfully so because of their scale. Totally different types of stories that they tell. But again, it's the gear that they utilize to make that happen. So for myself, it was a matter of, I started with the phone, I got into the drone, to then, looking at action cameras, to a dedicated camera, to then a second dedicated camera. It was always small foundational steps as I grew to seeing the production value that I wanted to offer. But I would say largely learn with what you have, because it'll force more of a creative standpoint behind the story that you're trying to tell. And then that way you can be a master of what you have. And then when you do get more tools, you can be even more creative and continue to refine that craft a little bit more. So don't feel like you have to buy thousands of dollars worth of equipment just because the next guy has it. I've seen some incredible stories told from a visual media with very limited gear. And I think it's just a matter of your creativity behind it that can separate you from the next person. But as far as helping with that, sure, I'd be more than happy to kind of maybe in the future put together kind of like a mini series as far as how I've tackled it, and kind of the trial and error that I've learned from. So hopefully other people looking to kind of maybe start something similar can benefit from it. So stay tuned for that. Your next question there, Mark, was when you have all your gear attached to Yeti, what's your solution for keeping it clean? Do you hand wash it, use some sort of pressure washer, or go to an actual car wash? In that regard, I actually just basically take it to a manual car wash with just the wash wand and just blast off all the dirt and grime and mud or whatever, and call it good. I don't go to immaculate detail just because I know the following weekend I'm going to be going right back out in the trails and getting it all dirty again. So honestly, I don't bother with it. I may be a little bit more in tune come the winter months when the roads start to get salted, or they put chemicals out for de-icing just to kind of help with some of the premature wear and tear on the frame. But otherwise, that's pretty much it. The interior, I'm a little bit more OCD about. I'll vacuum it out, do the Armor All wipes and Windex and all that good stuff a little bit more in detail. But the exterior, I guess I'm proud of where I've gone on my weekends, and I kind of wear it a little bit longer than I should. But otherwise, I haven't had any real issues. If you wax it a couple times a year just to help keep the clear coat happy, maybe that's good enough. But otherwise, no, that's really it. I wouldn't stress too much about it, at least from my experience. And then, Mark, your last question, solution for music to avoid copyright. Right now, I currently use MusicBed. They're a monthly subscription, and they're really great, to be honest with you. They have everything that I need as far as all genres, be able to kind of go into specifics as far as instruments that you want within the music, if you want vocals in it, different tempos of songs, all that good stuff. And what's unique with MusicBed is they have music ID, basically, that's attached to your account that you're uploading the music to, that will basically verify your account, kind of work with on the back end, voiding out all copyright issues so you don't run into infringement or getting your videos taken down and stuff like that. So they're a relatively affordable monthly subscription. I'm not sponsored or anything by them. I've been using them independently for quite some time and have done it's worked really good for me. I know there's multiple different platforms of Artlist or Epidemic Sound, I think it is, or some other ones, but music beds work great for me. I guess I haven't run into an issue where I felt like I needed to seek alternative options, but that's what I've been using for probably the better part of a year and a half now. All right, guys, quick break. I need a drink of tea here to keep the voice going. But up next here, we're going to switch to Instagram. And Nate with Dirt Lifestyle, he asks, what is your favorite non-off-road related YouTube channel? And that's a great question, because honestly, 95% of the time, everything that I watch on YouTube is all off-road and overland related. So I actually, before I was reading through the questions, actually I had to kind of go through all my subscribe links to see who exactly, but on occasion, and I probably should watch more, I'm always one to learn and kind of seek more opportunities and challenge myself from a filmmaking standpoint, and even photography and stuff like that. So as far as those accounts like Peter McKinnon or Maddie Hapoya, and different accounts of similar nature are probably ones that I watch just because not only are they entertaining to watch, but they provide great insight as far as how to capture better film when you're out on travels. Different camera techniques if you don't have certain items like gimbals and things like that, or how you can be more efficient when you're editing and spend less time in that process. They kind of really provide you a lot of great educational foundational points that I try and implement into my workflow. So from that perspective, I guess not only is it fun to watch, they make it fun to watch while you're learning something, but there's a lot of techniques and tips and tricks that I then carry over to try to help my process. So those would be some good examples. Though honestly, I spend more time watching YouTube than I do regular TV anyway. So if you guys have great suggestions as far as maybe more overland or off-road specific, or even channels that you guys like, definitely feel free to put them in the comments or let me know. Perhaps some of you guys know some good, Food Network people that could help with easy meals. Maybe that's something I should subscribe to some more. But otherwise, no, YouTube's great in that perspective. A lot of good educational and just entertainment content to watch there. But as far as that goes, those would be the ones top of mind. Mule Electrics asks, who does all your vehicle upgrades? You guys do. For those who know and live in the Washington area or even the Pacific Northwest, Mule Expedition Outfitters, they are an overland kind of specialist company, and they've done all the work pretty much on my truck as far as all the aftermarket and modifications. So that team is amazing over there. They're very fun to work with, awesome crew, and they've definitely helped me in regards to all that's on the build. So you guys are great. I'll be probably in for some more upgrades as time goes on. Taco Crawler, he asks, now that you're working at iKamper, do you know whether the new fabrics are interchangeable with the previous lineups? So kind of going into, I guess, more work stuff, we are releasing a new lineup of tents in the future, and we debuted those at SEMA when I worked over there, so some of you guys may have seen the videos that circulated on the social media channels. But with that question specifically, I'm going to say a tentative yes. Don't quote me, because I am still learning all the specifics therein, but I would say stay tuned as we kind of release those. So that's my iKamper hat talking. So stay tuned. I'm sure we'll make an official announcement as we get closer, but my bet is going to say yes. Lucy the Land Rover, they ask, what do you think of new and old Defenders as an overland vehicle? Honestly, my knowledge and experience with Defenders are quite minimal, so that would be one that I probably would defer to the next person. I feel like from what I've just seen, I guess, on social media and YouTube channels that I've watched, that they're a great rig, they're a classic rig. Everybody has nothing but great things to talk about them. So I feel like they're a great medium to have while on the trail. I just personally have not yet to experience any, or at least be around some to where I can ask those type of questions to the owners thereof. So I would say go for it. Honestly, in that regard, I think new and old, I think they all have a place depending on your use and your overall build. Josh, he asks, where do you want your channel to grow from here? And that is a good question. Honestly, I would just love to continue to grow the community that we have. I feel like we've gotten to know, and I've been able to meet so many incredible people, not only here locally, but across the country and even some parts of the world too. And I could not be more thankful from it. So I would say, as far as the direction that I want it to continue to grow, would just be doing exactly with what we have been and are doing. Just keeping our numbers going with the community that we've built on YouTube, on all the other platforms, because it's amazing to hear and engage with you guys, and being able to meet up at these local events like SEMA or the Overland Expos or Northwest Overland Rally and all the other ones in between, and just be able to, meet with you and hear your guys' stories of, travels that you've been on, inspirations from different filmmakers that's gotten you out, or even just, revitalizing an experience and pastime that you may have once done and it kind of went to the wayside. So it's awesome to hear those stories and be able to connect with the community in that fashion. So I would say just to continue with the forward momentum that we have, but obviously to build it on a larger scale. And I'm more than humbled to the fact of where we're at already. I mean, I would have never thought that we're at 11,000 subscribers as I'm recording this. So I remember when we first hit 1,000 subscribers, I was beyond happy, because it happened right at the end of the year before New Year's, near midnight. So the timing on that was pretty perfect. But otherwise, I'm very happy with the community that we've built. You guys are awesome. And the support that I receive is just incredible. So just continuing with that. Anna, she asks a few questions here. First one being, how do you stay warm in the tent? Well, that is actually a lot easier now, because with the iKamper, we make an insulation tent that basically is mounted to the interior perimeter. And what it does is not only helps with keeping, any drafts or anything from kind of bleeding through the canvas, but also to help isolate and keep in all your warmth. And honestly, this is the first tent where I've been actually able to utilize something like that, and I'm very, very excited. I don't run any propane buddy heaters inside the tent, or diesel heaters or anything of that fashion. With the insulation tent, a solid sleeping bag, I mean, those alone will be a pretty good investment depending on the quality that you get. I personally utilize a Nemo 0 degree bag in the winter months. But between the insulation kit, a good sleeping bag, I did upgrade the mattress to an X-Bed air mattress from the factory, stock mattresses. And that's not only for comfort, but also because of the R values that come with those X-Bed mattresses. They have a high R value rating, which basically is like an insulation rating. So it keeps you kind of warm from that standpoint when you're kind of sleeping near the platform of a tent. And with a combination of all those, I've been toasty warm in single digits and have been perfectly fine. I'll admit it does kind of suck when you wake up and you have to climb out of your tent, but otherwise that's how I usually keep warm. She asks the go-to camping meal. Honestly, anything just good, hearty, and delicious. I really don't have a favorite go-to. Lately I've been really into stir fry and hearty soups and things like that. But otherwise, I really kind of enjoy it all. I guess my biggest challenge is maybe I'll appreciate a meal more when I can cook it start to finish. So otherwise, yeah, that's kind of where we're at with the camp meals. Favorite pastime and activity at camp? I love to get out and do some hiking nearby. I don't like to venture too far from the vehicles for obvious reasons, but doing some hikes if they're adjacent to camp, I love to do that. I would really like to get in as we kind of dive into our winter season more here in the Pacific Northwest and ski resorts open. I would love to do some deep winter camping and then wake up the following day and go hit the hills and do some skiing and stuff like that. I think that would be fun. I think that would be new exciting content for the channel too, but those have always been pastimes that I've enjoyed, but maybe we can incorporate those more into the camp. A lot of folks at work honestly are really into mountain biking and rock climbing and all that stuff, so those are still fairly new to me and opens up a whole new can of worms of gear to now buy for another expensive hobby, but maybe down the road we can get into that some more. So otherwise, I'm usually running around with these cameras and that keeps me occupied enough, but for the trips that I go on, when I do leave the cameras at home, that's typically what you'll see me doing. Wicked Overland, they ask, what program do you use to edit your videos and how many trips do you plan a year? Good question. So as far as the program that I use, I've been running Final Cut Pro for years now. I remember when I first started, it was iMovie and it worked. Honestly, I had no training with it. I just kind of dove in and see what happens and goes from there. But I've since kind of gotten a little bit more of a hold on things, and I purchased the Final Cut Pro program and it's been great. Honestly, I feel like I've barely scratched the surface on the capability of it. So maybe as I kind of continue to learn more and kind of refine the production and editing process, we can kind of make some more exciting content. But that's the program of choice that I've been using. As far as number of trips per year, you know, working full time, it's a battle. It's balancing everything out, not only work, the trips, and then personal life here at home with family. I'd like to try and get out about 2 or 3 times a month, well, depending, and at least get an episode every other week. I'd love to get to a point to do one every week, but time commitment and just balancing everything is a really big struggle. So trying to do that is always something I'd like to strive for, but that is typically the time frame as far as what I would like to get out and do. Obviously, as vacations utilize, we could make bigger trips happen with weeks off and stuff like that, but overall, that is the general allowance of usually what I have. Fish on 2, they asked, did you take any classes to learn filmmaking? So kind of piggybacking the last question, no, I did not. I have honestly learned everything either self-taught, lots of trial and error, or actually just watching people from other channels and kind of seeing their style, trying to, you know, make it my own as I record and edit it and shoot and things like that while I'm out on the trail. But then also watching people like Peter McKinnon or Matty Hapoya or anybody else in that nature to see, you know, how they take on filmmaking and editing and stuff like that. And again, try and incorporate that in my workflow. But no, I didn't go to school for anything. I didn't take any formal classes. Honestly, nowadays there's so many different resources online where you could, you know, if you spend the time and dedicate to doing that self-learning, you could really, you know, learn quite a bit and, you know, apply that when you're out and doing these trips and stuff like that. So to answer your question in short, I have not. Our next question from JP here, they ask, what tire and size are on your Tacoma? Also, is it lifted? So easy one there. The tires are of a size of a 285, 75 R16. So I stayed with the same stock wheel size, but I did upgrade the tire to roughly a 33 inch. And basically to help fit that, I also needed to do a cab mount chop or a body mount chop just to clear it when the wheel is at full articulation. But otherwise I stuck just with 33s. Honestly, it's a good size to not stress everything out in the suspension, but also it works for the trails and travels that I do where I don't really feel like I need a bigger size yet, but we'll see. Who knows what happens down the road, but I've been running that size almost since I've purchased the truck. So in that regard. As far as the lift goes, I do have the ARB BP51 suspension, and then also the Dakar leaf springs with an add-a-leaf in the rear. I've been running those for years now and love it. It's a great setup for me. Haven't had any issues. Obviously, as you guys know from watching the films and episodes, the leaf springs, they do like to talk back a little bit, so they are quite squeaky. I believe ARB did upgrade those springs where they have spacers or different things in between to help mitigate some of that noise, but otherwise, I mean, it just comes with the territory, I guess. They are fairly old. I think they're about 3 years now and have seen quite a bit. So who knows, maybe we'll add that to the next modification to upgrade or replace down the road. But otherwise, that's the suspension and setup that we have right now. Our next question, have you considered having a meetup or organizing one? So we touched on that a little earlier. Yes, I would love to. I think next year we'll really get that going. But I would like to keep that exclusive for our Patreon members just because of the support that they help with the channel. I think that's fair for them because of the continuance that through their contribution allows me to do this more and more frequently. So with them, I would love to make that happen. So stay tuned for those announcements and we'll go from there. But otherwise, as far as kind of on a larger scale, as I'm recording this, I did announce on Instagram and Facebook of doing a toy drive here with a local nonprofit organization. And doing events like that, I obviously am going to open that up to everybody because it's a great way to not only give back to our community of those in needs, but also to kind of meet up with you guys for those who maybe Patreon just isn't in the books, but they still want to get together, chat, hang out, and all for a good cause. So events like that, absolutely, we'll open it up to everybody. But for dedicated off-road trails and meetups and campouts, I would like to keep that for those of our Patreon community. Our next question from NXN Overlander, what's your dream build? And that's a good question. So if I had to remove the iKamper hat for a second, I would say maybe later on in the older age, when I'm kind of done with just climbing up and down ladders, I would love to get a full-size truck with a flatbed conversion and do like a four-wheel camper style setup on it. Maybe not specifically them, but I would love to have that as a build, not only because you have all your creature comforts, of course, but my thought is here in the Pacific Northwest, obviously our winter months are just nothing but downpour rain. And what I always envision is worst case scenario is when we get out, the weather is not always ideal, and that shouldn't keep you as a deterrent to stay home. So having a setup like that, it would be so nice to be in the comforts of a camper, be able to cook, hang out, relax, and not have any canvas of tent material to worry about drying out. That would be amazing, especially as you're kind of in the older age and you're just kind of done with dealing with all that. That would be fantastic. And then you're comfortable nonetheless. And then also secondary to that is I'd like to keep everything on a single vehicle. Trailers are awesome. They provide a lot of utility and convenience, but they also come with cons as well. So that's why I guess I've never pursued one. But even so, you could have a lot of those comforts with a build like that. And that would be, I don't know, we'll see what happens down the road. But this industry is constantly innovating with cool and unique and different ideas as far as getting outdoors. So who knows what the future may hold and what new things might be invented. But for right now, that would be up to mind as far as what I would say a dream build is. Our next question here from D8, they ask, chair and campfire setup. The chair that I have is just the front runner chair. It's like the director style chair. Reason for it is it just folds up really easy. I don't like that they come with such a hefty price tag, I'll be honest. I mean, it's just a chair at the end of the day. But otherwise, I really like how small and compact they are, but the convenience of pockets on the sides, and they're fairly comfortable too and sturdy as well. So I guess everything has a trade. As far as the campfire setup, for years I've been using the Outland Fireball, the deluxe model, I believe. I bought that on Amazon a while back. And honestly, it's worked great. it's held up to a lot of the abuse that I've done on the trails of it bouncing around all over the place. Fires up every time, and with that I also utilize the propane tank, not only for the fireplace but also for cooking, and if times that I'm running like the buddy heater inside the annex or things like that, all of it utilizes that fuel source. And then bonus is you're a little bit more earth conscious by not utilizing those green canisters, the single 1 pounds, because with the tanks you can refill them and then you're ready to go, but then also have multiple uses. So that's kind of my thoughts and setup in that regard. Moving down the list here. Before we do, I'm gonna get a quick drink. Moving down the list is Johnny Utah 253, and he asks, what was your favorite overlanding trip? I mean, if you could go back and relive it, which one would it be? I would say for that one, before the channel was even a thing where I started, I did a family trip going all the way down the 101 south, and we started in Washington and ended in the Redwoods in California. And that trip was awesome, to be honest. It was a great time, not only to spend with family, but to see the diversity of the landscapes. I mean, driving along the coast, especially through Oregon, is just amazing. And if you haven't done it, add it to the list. There's just so many great spots to check out. But I think one of the more memorable aspects of that particular trip was we were camping in the Redwoods at the Gold Bluff campground, I believe it is. And that campground is right on the beach. And what's cool with that is not only the views, of course, but that morning we had Roosevelt elk walk through our campground, and everybody was just in awe and grabbing photos and whatnot. But it was just crazy to see that they just came from the forest, were hanging out on the beach, and just chilled right in the middle of the campground, eating and took a nap, and we all kept our distance. But it was just crazy to see that, and I think that was just really memorable. But the following day we headed back up north on our way back home and went to Crater Lake, and unfortunately the weather didn't allow a complete view of it. But what I do remember was it snowed like crazy on the drive up, and it was just a drastic in weather because the prior day or so we were sitting on the beach with our chair hanging out in about 70 degrees, and then the next day we're literally getting snowed on and we're reaching for whatever jackets that we had at the time. So just seeing the drasticness of just, you know, where you're traveling is just amazing. I think that kind of stuck in my memory a little bit more. I would love to redo that trip one day and just kind of capture it and showcase it to you guys, because that's a very easy trip to do. It's largely highway, of course, but the views are just stunning nonetheless. And maybe with that next opportunity we can check out some more side roads and trails, of course, and see a little bit more off the beaten path. But that one was definitely memorable. I would say otherwise, we did another family trip, and this one is recorded. We went and visited 3 national parks of the Glacier, Yellowstone, and then Grand Teton national parks. And that was amazing, not only to check those off the list, but just to see the landscape and be able to witness all that different type of terrain and go on some incredible hikes and stuff like that. So those are a little bit more memorable. I would love to obviously do more as time and vacation allows, but those I would say I would love to do again just because of the great memories that were made from it. Pete asks, what made you want to get into overlanding and what inspired you to go that route? That's a really good question. So I would say multiple things, and we touched on them, but really, I remember kind of another little story here. I remember way back before working in the industry that I do now, on my lunch breaks, those were the only time I could retain some of my sanity from prior jobs. I would always hop on YouTube and watch some of my favorite overland channels. So Lifestyle Overland, Primal Outdoors, Expedition Overland. I mean, there's obviously plenty more, but those just come to mind. But I would watch those on my lunch break. I was just in just completely engaged with everything that I was witnessing, not only from the adventure, the vehicles, the gear, the landscapes that they were exploring. And I was I was diving so deep into that. I remember even coming home, I'd even watch more episodes. And I think the inspiration just grew and grew and grew over time, where I was inspired to get out and do trips of my own and just explore even more, and not only document it, but just to live life to the fullest, right? And explore even the state that you're in. And I'm very fortunate to live here in the Pacific Northwest and in Washington, where we have a lot of that landscape, and be able to do that every weekend and see different things no matter which direction you drive. But on the same token, I would say a lot of it came from, if we take a step here in an emotional direction, a lot of it came from when my father passed away. I don't really talk about it too much on the channel. Obviously, it deeply impacted me the number of years back when it happened, but he was always one to enjoy the outdoors. And I remember we all grew up. Our family moved, mom and dad, from the Midwest. I grew up in Wichita, Kansas, and we moved all the way out here in Washington back in 2006. And coming from Kansas, obviously there's zero as far as mountain landscape. So I remember flying in on the plane, and I looked out the passenger window and I saw Mount Rainier for the first time, and I was just absolutely just blown away. It's like I'd never seen anything like that before. So I was just engulfed with, what in the world is that? And what is the snow sitting that high up? And the mountain and the peaks, and seeing Puget Sound and the Olympics and everything else. It was just amazing. So it was from that opportunity of coming to a state like that, his passing, but then being able to really kind of take a self-check and know that you need to live life to the fullest at every opportunity that you can. And one thing that I did, and I'm extremely proud that I took on the opportunity, is I successfully summited Mount Rainier a few years back. I'm proud to say that I stood at the summit at 14,410 feet, and I scattered my father's ashes up there. And doing something like that, I guess it ignites something inside you to where you want to be the best that you can and challenge yourself to do more. So overlanding, I guess, was that call, if you will, where I wanted to be more and do more and challenge myself in every aspect of what I'm doing. Answer those calls, not only from trying to be a better filmmaker, a storyteller, looking and exploring different areas. It all kind of, I guess, formulated, it encompassed to live through what he instilled in me. So that definitely, I guess, was like the snowball effect that kind of got me into this overlanding thing, and to be able to share that with my family and friends and meet the community that we have and all the people that have been in part of my life because of that. I'm amazed. So having that continuously be a recurrence is just amazing, and I'm truly humbled to be a part of the industry that I am. But that, I would guess, kind of going from an emotional standpoint, that would be one of the biggest starters as the years progress, to really, really dive into this and just make the most out of your life. So between those who I watch, the family aspect, and then just being inspired by the community as well, it all formulates to just kind of get out and drive you to do more. And hopefully that's kind of what I bring across on the episodes, to kind of help inspire you guys to get out and do more. And on any scale, it doesn't need to be a full-blown, we're going to go across the entire world and do a massive trip. I mean, even in your own backyard, when we here recently just explored the Gifford Pinchot National Forest, it could be a simple trip like that, and that was only a week long. So things like that, getting out on the weekends, whatever else, make the most of the time that you have and being able to capitalize that. Our next question here, on a lighter note, and I appreciate you guys taking that journey with me. On a lighter note, Fit Like Nate, he asks, he asks, top 5 places in Washington you want to go again or would recommend for a beginner. That is a good question, Nate. So that's extremely difficult to answer because I love everything here in Washington. So it'd be a very difficult thing to narrow down 5 specifics. What I will say is we also are very fortunate to have 3 national parks here. So Mount Rainier, North Cascades, and the Olympic National Parks, all of which encompass some incredible places to go explore. And none of are hard to get to by any means. But even the surrounding areas of the national forest just outside the national park boundaries present an incredible amount of opportunity, not only for dispersed camping, but even points of interest such as lakes, rivers, incredible mountainside views, whatever you want to do. There's so much just in those specific locations that I think would give you a great opportunity to explore. If I had to add a couple more in, I would say the Snoqualmie Pass area. Not only is that beautiful from that standpoint, but the pass, I mean, it's really cool just because of, in the higher elevations with the mountains, there's the 3 lakes over there as well. So those give you some really great opportunities to get out and be near the water. But there's a lot of side trails that kind of expand just from that general area alone. Also the ski resorts there too with Snoqualmie. I would say if we zoomed out even further, take on the Washington BDR, the Backcountry Discovery Route, because that particular trail basically it runs the entire state, right? It goes from the Oregon border all the way to the Canadian border, and it largely just encompasses the central Washington range. But you get to see it from an aspect that not too many people have been able to, just because you're off the beaten path, you're exploring a different landscape, and it's all largely, just off-road, forest road trails. So that alone will give you an idea of every section that you can explore, but then also be able to witness and see different things along the way. I mean, for example, right when you start, I think it's one of the earlier sections of the BDR, there's the ice caves and things like that. So there's really cool points of interest from a larger trail that you can then find and explore and see and add different aspects on your list of what you would call your favorite. So I know that's not specifics, but the general areas just give you so much where you would feel and give you enough opportunity to dive in further. Our next question here is what's your camera setup for your videos and when you shoot photos, lenses and cameras? So right now I am actually utilizing the same camera that I've had all this time since I've upgraded from my phone. It is the Panasonic Lumix G85. Not only is this camera that, but the second camera that I bought is also a mirror copy of it. Honestly, it's a very entry-level camera. I think I bought it for about $700, and that also included the 12 to 60 millimeter lens as well, which I primarily use about 90% of the time, not only for filming but also for photos. I do, however, have purchased separate lenses on top of that. They're this still within the same family, the Lumix G Vario of the wide angle lens for doing self interviews and things like that, just to have a wider view. But then I also have a telephoto lens of 100 to 300 of the G Vario as well, and between those they've worked out really good. I am looking at buying like a prime lens that has a much more open aperture, so I can get much better low light shots. That's definitely something that I've struggled with to capture. So I'd like to kind of dive into that a little bit more and kind of open up the span as far as lenses. But honestly, these cameras have been great for me. I'm sure I've barely scratched the surface as far as their full capability. But at the same time, cameras are very expensive. Not only is it the camera itself, all the lenses, the accessories, chargers, batteries, stands. I mean, there's so much that goes into it. It's more than just the camera. So I guess that's why I've stuck with a more financially reasonable setup, because then it allows me to free up the budget to buy other things as well. So in that regard, that's what I've utilized as far as my cameras go. I do have, as far as action cameras, the DJI Osmo Action, their first one that they released. I know they have a second one that's just been announced. But I have two of those, and I utilize them just for, more risky shots of outside the vehicle that I use to suction cup to, getting suspension shots, or things where if the camera fell off for any reason and smacked the ground, I'm not going to be worried about it as much. I also utilize those for getting like underwater shots and things like that where I can fully submerge it. I also use those same cameras even for in the cab shots when I'm driving. I'll just suction cup a mount to the front windshield, and because of the wide angle view, I guess for me it feels like it presents a really good angle to kind of showcase the interior versus one of the cameras. So yeah, that's what I use as far as the main cameras. Currently, the drone that I have is the DJI Mavic Air 2, and that has been fantastic. I did upgrade from the prior drone that I did buy years back, which was just the Mavic Air. They've been great for me. Flight times are awesome. The recording is great. It gives a great image for not only video but photography as well. No complaints. I think the best part is I've actually crashed the drone several times, and it gets up and continues to fly. Obviously, I got to change the blades out because those are usually ruined, but I have smacked a few trees on accident. But I guess the good part is it's kept on chugging along, so that's always great. But as far as the camera stuff goes, I think that is about it. Again, prior to recording this, I literally just bought within days the second camera here, and I specifically went with the same model that I previously had just because all the lenses can work the same on the same platform. I didn't want to rebuy a whole new set of lenses and batteries and filters and all that kind of stuff. That stuff just adds up, and honestly it's a financial burden that I just don't want to redo all over again. So having the two cameras is great. It gives me the ability to have a dedicated lens on one, whether I need wide angle and then a telephoto to grab those shots of maybe there's an elk or something way out in the field and I need to quickly get it without interchanging lenses. It's been great from that standpoint, but then also for videos like this we can have two different views to cycle back through. But as far as the cameras go, that is typically what I have actually. Yeah. Next question is from Zach, and he asks, I currently have a 2011 Suburban that I overland with. I'm on a budget, but I've outfitted it pretty well. I think I'm about going to a truck instead. Any advice for SUVs versus truck? Important things to consider that you're not considering, and thank you. My family and I love your content. Well, Zach, thank you very much for your support. I appreciate it. As far as helping your question there, honestly, I guess it really depends down to your intended use. So I remember before the Tacoma, I had a SUV, or really it was more of a crossover. It was a Mitsubishi Outlander Sport. And by no means is that a trail-rated vehicle. It was honestly one of the first cars that I was able to purchase by myself. I loved it from a commuting aspect, but I quickly outgrew it. For myself, I loved the versatility of a truck platform. I loved how the aftermarket support was incredible for it, especially for the Tacomas. So when I went and was researching a new vehicle to buy, I wanted to know that I wouldn't outgrow it again. And as you guys know from following the channel, I've changed the setups on Yeti quite a few times, from the current open bed setup with the rack to what I had previously with the GFC of a camper style to a canopy with a tent, and everything in between. And depending on what your use is and what you would like to kind of utilize it for, the truck I feel gives a large wide opportunity. I think one of my favorite things about the truck platform is the full length like bed drawer systems that I have with decked. When I purchased those, it was a total game changer as far as getting away from all the storage bins and things like that. Not to say that you can't do that with an SUV, it's just it's a little bit more compact in size and you kind of have to be a little bit more creative with it. I've seen a lot of people with SUVs and 4Runners and things like that where swing out dual bumpers are usually a calling to be able to have like a drop down table, be able to host like high lift jacks and jerry cans and water cans and all that kind of good stuff, just because space is a premium. With the truck platform, I feel like you can utilize more of that space, but then also if there's particular gear and cargo that you just don't want in the cab, you can segregate it in the bed. So I feel like that would be a good choice, but again, it depends on your family size, trails that you're looking to go on, how you want to build the truck, whether you do a rooftop tent or not. There's a lot of aspects into it, so I guess do a little bit of homework, but don't feel like you need to buy the latest and greatest truck. Honestly, buying used is just as fantastic. Be able to save a couple bucks, but then you can have a dedicated rig for maybe doing trips like this, and then maybe have a commuter. So that's always something to consider, but again, I'm probably wrong from the SUV standpoint. Some of you guys out there might have different opinions, but at least for me, with the first experience that I've had with the truck, I really have found the versatility of that platform to be incredible. Not only for what I currently have, but even those that I've seen with going with a slide-in camper. I mean, you can take it so many different ways, and I think that's why that truck platform has been probably more preferable in my book. Moving on here, Joey, he asks, beginner Forest Service / Fire Road Trail recommendations in Oregon or Washington. That's a good question. I would say one of the great resources that I have used has been Trails Off-Road. And what's really cool about them is that on their website, they are subscription based, but it's not bad as far as price range. I think it's like $25 annually, somewhere in there maybe. It's really not bad at all. But what's cool about that is that what they do is on a map platform, they showcase all the trails that are of different ranking. So if a beginner or a full-on extreme rock crawling, whatever you want to do, they give it as far as a complete breakdown from what you're looking to get into. They provide photos of the trail, sometimes video as well. They give you like a weather report. You can download GPX files and upload them into your navigation software of choice. And then there's even comments and threads as far as people who've gone out on the trails and maybe current conditions, especially as we, maybe come out of our winter months and if there's still a large amount of snow on the trail. So it's a really great resource that I have used a lot, not only to find trails, but to also look at side trails from that one trail you were researching. It's not by any means the end all be all as far as seeing every trail. It is a great resource just to kind of find well-known trails or established trails that have been recorded. But at least it's a great starting point to then know what you're going to get into, the level of difficulty that you're going to encounter, but then take the fearfulness of can I do it factor out by seeing media content of before you even leave the house. So that way you can get a better understanding of things. As far as trails go, honestly, it really depends as far as your comfort level, what I would consider, easy or beginner friendly. Here in Washington, I haven't explored as much in Oregon as I'd like, but in Washington, at least a large amount of the trails that I've come across are fairly tame. It's just a matter of the weather conditions and time of year that you're going out. A gravel road that may be a piece of cake in the summer months, once you add snow to it, it can be totally different, especially if there's a sheet of ice underneath. So those are things to be mindful of, but for a large part, they're all pretty friendly. And again, it just depends on the area you're going to, but check out trailsoffroad.com. They've been a great resource for me. Not affiliated or anything with them. It's just a great resource that I came across randomly that I feel like could help a lot of people in that situation. All right, guys, so we're going to go over to our Facebook platform here. And Daryl, you were up first here. His question is, what cameras and drone do you use, and how much camera equipment do you carry when filming? So that's a good question. I think we've touched quite a bit on it already, but as far as the cameras, again, it's the Panasonic Lumix G85. I've recently purchased a second one to have so I can interchange all the existing equipment that I had already with the single camera. The drone was the DJI Mavic Air 2, and then the DJI Osmo Action cameras as well. And I guess when I go out on the trails, I typically bring pretty much everything, to be honest. There's never a time when I feel like I need to leave anything home. So I usually grab it all, and the reason being also is here recently I've upgraded the organization standpoint as far as all the filming equipment goes. I've been able to work with Last US Bag, and they have a full-length 9-pocket caddy, if you will, that basically sits behind the chair of the vehicle, and it clips in from the headrest points and dangles from the back. And what's unique about that is I'm able to dedicate each pocket to whatever I need as far as from the camera standpoint. So all the batteries, the lenses, mounts, all that kind of stuff, it basically hangs right there. And what's really cool is I have immediate access to it while I'm out on the trail, but when I need to take it in and out, you know, after I go on a trip and need to recharge all the batteries and offload footage, all I have to do is just basically take the headrest off, grab the whole bag with me, and in the house I go, and everything's right there. So even on the contrary, when I head out to trips, it's just one bag ready to go, and I have all that I need. So from that standpoint, it makes things super easy and convenient while keeping very organized. Up next is Rebel, and they ask, what's your favorite area to camp? No specifics. I just don't want to give your spots away. No worries in that regard. I would say my favorite area to go to, I would look at it from a year-round perspective, and that would be the Olympic Peninsula. Not only going into the national park, but also the national forest there as well. And the reason being is there's so much to see when you're over there, from going to the coast to the mountain ranges to the lakes and rivers. I mean, there is just a ton of opportunity. And the best part, you know, if you don't want to go into the higher elevations of all the snow and stuff like that, you can stay right at sea level, and there's some incredible beach sites. Even, you know, going to like La Push or Rialto Beach or Ruby Beach and things like that. I mean, those are incredible to witness, especially in the off season, as crowds typically are significantly less. But even if you venture up to like Hurricane Ridge, they have a little ski resort up there. The views are amazing. But there's just tons to see out that direction, which is probably why I'm typically out there more often than not. Just because there's just plenty of opportunity. So that would be probably my favorite area here in Washington to explore. Ryan asks, our next person here on Facebook, he asks, how is the new job, and are you doing their social or just shows, or full-time doing something else for them? So I don't think I've shared yet, but obviously you guys know I work at iKamper. I'm full-time employee. I'm not sponsored or anything with them, or not on their ambassador team or anything like that. I am a full-time employee Monday through Friday, and I would even say weekends too. But my specific role there is the dealer relationship manager. So basically what that means is I single-handedly maintain all of our dealer accounts throughout the entire US. So basically shops in your local area that sell iKamper products as an authorized retailer. I maintain all those relationships as well as look for new prospects. And it is a fun gig. It keeps me very busy, but honestly, kind of even going back to some of the earlier questions, being able to connect the dots of everybody in this industry and community as far as who knows who works where and whatnot. It's a very inviting and fun atmosphere, and I couldn't think of a better role to be doing here at iKamper. So that's what I do. Honestly, Here in the States right now, iKamper USA is literally a team of 12. So it's a relatively small team, but everybody brings their specific skill set to the table. So for myself, the dealer accounts are my territory, if you will. But it's a fun job. It gets me out to go to, taking on the SEMA shows there in Vegas, to attending the Overland expos across the country, to all the other trade shows and events. And I get to call that work. So again, I sometimes have to pinch myself that it's actually a real thing that I'm doing of my career here, but it's amazing to be able to call those places work and my office out on the roads, and be able to, do events like we did with Sky Camp. Some of you who follow iKamper closely know that we did a community-focused event there in Southern California a few weeks back, and it was a great way just to give back to our community and connect with everybody in the iKamper community as well. But it's a fun gig, and I absolutely love it. So hence why the change of the GFC to iKamper. I know that kind of shocked a lot of people, but I don't know if I can be any more clear that I work at iKamper. That is the whole reason of the change. Nothing on GFC, but I just obviously wanted to be able to support where I work, and I'm very happy to be a part of that team. So that is what's going on there. We do have a location here in Kent, Washington, so if anybody is interested or just wants to come by, feel free to come in and say hi. I'm usually there, but that can furthermore prove the point to all the naysayers that I work at iKamper. So there you go in that regard. Moving over to YouTube now, our last platform. We have a number of good questions there. First being is a Saucy 4x4 Crew. Love the name, by the way. They asked, how do you find trails and plan out your route? So I touched on it a little bit with Trails Off-Road as far as finding trails, but as far as maybe even looking at from campsite perspective, I utilize a couple different platforms, and the first being is Gaia GPS. I've been utilizing that platform for quite a while, and it's very powerful once you kind of get an understanding of it, just because of the different layers that you can add on to it. Everything from like public land to snowfall reports to forest roads to everything in between. It's very powerful once you really kind of dive in and learn it. So what I do typically is kind of research a general area where I want to explore, look up the forest roads or MVUM approved areas, and be able to kind of see, okay, hey, this is a public land, there's vehicle access allowed. And then from there, I'll kind of look at like points of interest as far as, do I want to camp near a lake or a river or a mountain view? And I kind of look at the terrain and elevation. And then if I think I find something that might be worthwhile, I hop over to like Google Earth, and then I kind of just basically copy the coordinates of that specific area, and then look into seeing if it's going to be worthwhile, or if there's a good trail system out there, or if there's a good camping spot. And sometimes there are good winners, and I'll be honest, other times not so much. There's been campsites that look like they offer a great massive view, and it's going to be epic once you get out there, and then you're staring at 100-foot tall evergreen trees. So there's definitely been those situations quite a bit. But that just comes with the territory, and that's just part of the adventure of exploring. What I usually do is mark several different alternatives just to see if things pan out or not. But largely, that's just part of the fun. And when you get out there, you'll recognize if the trails are actually true to what you'd researched, if they are maybe overgrown and just haven't seen anybody in a while. Or unfortunately, if there's gate closures, whether they're seasonal or of misuse of the land, or worst case scenario with our forest fires, if the land just completely changes and it's just not even in access anymore. So there's quite a bit of different variables that play into it, and it just kind of comes with doing your research and homework. But as far as the general outline goes, that's typically what I do when it comes to finding trails and seeing about finding dispersed camping opportunities. Up next is Pacific Northwest Explorer, and they ask, when you first started overlanding, you once said that you had a small SUV. What was it, and what mods made you realize that an SUV was not your thing? So we kind of touched on that just a little bit earlier, but yeah, the SUV that I did have, it was really more like a crossover. Honestly, it was that Mitsubishi Outlander Sport. It was great. It was a fun commuter car. I really enjoyed it. I think what I missed more than anything is when I didn't have any roof racks or anything on it. It had an awesome moon roof that retracted all the way back, and then you could see through the glass. And it was great views while you're driving. Got a lot better fuel economy than I do now. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I just outgrew it. Space was always a concern with gear management. I typically carry a lot more than the normal person when it comes to all the camera gear and stuff. So that eats a lot of space. Obviously, when you bring your four-legged family members and anybody else along with the trips, space is just a premium. So I felt like I needed a bigger platform. And even more than that, there's obviously no aftermarket support for a vehicle like that as far as a Mitsubishi goes. It was one that just got me able to go to and from work. It was my first car I was really able to purchase on my own, but it definitely didn't serve the purpose of being an overland specific vehicle, at least for my needs. It got me where I needed to go for quite some time. There was multiple trips that I did utilize it. I had rooftop tents and all our gear and a hitch receiver with a cargo basket, and we're driving down the road literally like this because there's just nothing I could do to help the suspension. I mean, there was a lot of things that just added up where I knew okay, there needs to be a change. And that's when I introduced buying the Tacoma, and been pretty happy since then. But ultimately, again, it goes back to I found a need that needed to be addressed versus a want, and the truck was able to make that platform where I could build it out how I wanted. I could always change it down the road because of the multiple aspects that it provided. But then largely, the aftermarket support is just second to none. I mean, there's anything and everything. You can completely rebuild it if you truly wanted to. So that was very inspiring to see, which is probably why I largely went after going that direction. Let's see here. Our next question comes from Dave Wallace. He asks, what fridge do you use and how do you keep it powered when at camp? Dual battery setup or power bank? Thanks again for the great videos and content. I appreciate the support, Dave. Thank you. The fridge that I use is a Dometic CFX 35, and I love it. It's perfect size. It sits right in the footprint behind the passenger seat, so it's easy. The lid is one that just opens straight up versus to the side, so when I open up the rear door, I have everything I need right there. What's great about that is I also, through Mule Expedition Outfitters, they helped me do the wiring to run the power directly to the battery. I did upgrade the battery to like an Odyssey Extreme just to help with all the aftermarket accessories that are connected to it. I don't have a dual battery setup, but that single battery that is upgraded, I've never had an issue as far as needing more power. And even more so, the Dometic is smart enough where if it were to detect low voltage from the power source, it would shut itself off. And that's a great situation because honestly, if the battery drained to that point and the Dometic saw the voltage level, it would power itself off, and then you'd still be able to power your vehicle on the following day heading out. I've never ever been in that situation where it did that, but also I don't have that much hooked up to the battery at the same token. Besides the winch and light bars and a few accessory lights and then the fridge, there's not that much compared to a full-blown Overland built rig with every light possible. And then at the same token, they're not all on at the same time consistently too. So once the fridge is up to, or down to temp, I should say, there's really very little draw to keep it at that I found. So it works well. I think actually even moving the fridge into the interior of the truck has helped with that as well, as opposed to in the bed of the truck when I used to have it in that setup. But otherwise, if you didn't have a means to hook it up directly to a battery of such, I do remember earlier on I hooked it up to like a portable power station like the Goal Zero, this one that I have, but you can utilize any of them like a Jackery or any other brand, as long as it has the right connection points. But with those you could get away with a great weekend use as far as the charge. I do know like the Goal Zero specifically, they have adapters where you can charge them from the 12 volt in the vehicle, so the unit itself is getting a charge as you're driving. And then of course you can do solar panels to keep that topped off while you're at camp with the vehicle turned off. So there's multiple ways you can go about it, and I've utilized all of them to be honest, but from a convenience standpoint, I did make the investment just to have it directly hooked up to the vehicle. And then that way it's just kind of a set and forget to a certain degree, but you're able to just keep the fridge running as you need it and not have to worry about the main power supply. So that's what I use, and it's been great so far. Trevor asks, what would be a good overlanding Christmas present for someone between 50 and $100? I know this is cutting it close, Trevor, as I'm recording this, so hopefully you're able to maybe get a gift by now or not, but nonetheless, maybe this could be a great opportunity for a future birthday present or something for that person. But nonetheless, between that price range for, I guess, any gift in general, it really depends on the person, what they have, hobbies that they're into and things like that, their vehicle setup. Honestly, like a good headlamp, I know it's kind of a random one, but that is a solid purchase, because you don't really realize how important they are until the sun is set and if you don't have any area lighting. The one that I have is BioLite. It's a USB rechargeable headlamp, and it works great. You don't have to deal with batteries. It gives you a full brightness all the way till it actually dies. So unlike some headlamps where they kind of taper out their lumen output as the batteries go, this one gives you full on light bar action from your head from the headlamp standpoint. So those are great. Camping tables, those, you get those pretty inexpensive. Camping chairs, even like the Front Runner multi-piece kitchen set, those are pretty great too. I utilize that myself. Those have worked out really well as far as having everything you need, even a cutting board and knives and different utensils. Bluetooth speakers are always a great option too, for if you want to listen to some music while at camp or things like that. And even like maybe multi-tools, stuff like that to, just having the gear arsenal. Even honestly, I know they're not as exciting, but gift cards are great, especially if there's a local, off-road or overland shop that person maybe frequently shops or goes to. Maybe that could help with the purchase for something specific that they may be looking into that you just don't know, or even at the same token, utilize that card as a savings opportunity on a larger purchase. So it really depends, but there's a number of different things. I mean, you could look at air up and air down tools such as manual or automatic deflators. I think maybe you could even get like an air compressor with like the alligator clamp styles on Amazon, and have that, just to kind of round out all the recovery gear standpoints too. So there's options. Just kind of get creative, see what's on their list of what they may have to upgrade or may not have at all. So hopefully that gives some ideas, and apologies for the tight timeline on that question there too. Our next person here down the list is Edmondson Off-Grid Homestead, and they ask, how did you get started? Instagram, YouTube. What's been your strategy to grow your channel and brand? So we kind of touched on some of those as well. I will say that Instagram was the first as far as the initial platform. I mainly used it for a lot of hiking photos and stuff early on before Conquest Overland was a thing. And then as time progressed and I kind of dove into it more, I changed the setup of Instagram to that platform. And then soon thereafter, I was getting into filming videos and things like that. And I wanted to introduce that on a larger scale. So that brought me to starting the YouTube channel, and also from the encouragement of family, friends, and coworkers. And then from there, I mean, really, it's all kind of just naturally and organically grown, to be honest. I haven't put in a place as far as here is how I'm going to grow the channel, and I have to hit this certain, milestone or anything like that. I've naturally just kind of let it build up. But I would say really it's also been able to grow like it has because of the community that we've built. Being able to go out on trips with maybe other YouTube channels that have a larger following, whether they're local or from afar. It's been great because of how I've developed the channel. I've always put it in a way where I've wanted to deliver consistent quality content of the best that I could deliver at that time. And I feel like being consistent with that shines through a lot versus, trying to play against the algorithms, especially with YouTube, where you feel like you have to get a video out every day in order to be discovered or recognized. So I guess I fight against the normal traditional system since, and maybe that's hindered the channel growth. I don't know, but honestly, at the end of the day, I wanted to give my audience the best foot forward as far as what I have to present, rather than rushing content out just to help grow it and have subpar content. I've always felt quality versus quantity is key. And that's why I set a goal for myself while maintaining everything else in the life of putting out an episode at least every other week, if not every week when I can. But again, there's obviously strategies if you want to rapidly grow it. I guess I haven't aggressively pursued that just because it's not as priority really for me. I like to get out on the trips at the pace that I am. I've been able to connect with incredible people at the same time. And honestly, being able to grow to 11,000 subscribers is fantastic. I would have never thought I would have gotten this far. So, in comparison to others who have maybe grown 10 times as fast in half the time, more power to them. But really, that's not as critical for me. I like to connect with everybody. And I truly like to develop relationships with the community and hear their stories and help them be inspired and educate as well. So I think that's more important than trying to hit a milestone number to grow the channel in an unorganic way. So hope that kind of answers some of that question. The next one, kind of a fun one. How is Stanley doing? Stanley is doing amazing. He is just a crazy little French bulldog that he is. I think he's a little over 30 pounds. Maybe he put on a little bit of weight from staying at home with our COVID times, but he is just living a life nonetheless. I really want to get him out on some more trips, so that's definitely on my part. He's just a sensitive little guy, to be honest with you. Whether it's the summer heat of 90 plus degrees, he rapidly overheats, and I hate subjecting him to that. And then on the same scale on the other spectrum, he gets super cold really easy too if there's anything below 30 degrees. So we always make the joke of Stanley needs to be in this perfect climate controlled environment when we go out on trips, of a perfect overcast 68 degree day with a south wind. So we kind of poke fun of it, but he's a sensitive little guy just because of the nature of the breed. But I definitely want to get him out some more. We can bundle him up or whatever and get him out on some more trips. But he's doing good, living a life at home with mom, and just hanging out and having fun. So stay tuned. We'll definitely get him out on some more trips in the coming time. The next question here is, what's been your biggest motivation and who inspired you to do what you do in current life goals? So those are the good questions there. I think the biggest motivation has, we've touched on it a little bit earlier on, but just kind of being able to be inspired by those that I watch on other, YouTube channels and platforms, like I mentioned with Lifestyle Overland or Primal Outdoors or Expedition Overland and everybody else. I mean, I'm forgetting so many, but there's so many out there that I watch that I'm constantly motivated by because of their story. I mean, for example, Kevin, Sarah, and Caroline with Lifestyle Overland. I would say I follow them probably the closest out of everybody, and just because I've been truly inspired by their story. I mean, they were ones where they worked full-time jobs. They took it upon themselves to sell everything and hit the road and embark on an incredible trip with their daughter Caroline, and create some incredible memories from literally exploring all the way up through the Northern Territories in Alaska and beyond. And it was from, you know, recording those documentaries and sharing it with the world that they were able to position themselves to travel full time. You know, so hats off to them, and I am absolutely, you know, blown away by their success that they've been able to maintain full life travel for the time that they have. And at the same token, when I met them at, you know, Overland Expo here this year, what you see on camera is the same thing. They're very humble, very open to help, and they're just great people. So not only seeing that from a film perspective, but then meeting them in person, it's very motivating to see that. I guess that's what drives me to kind of continue to do more and to explore more, but in my own way, with how I'm currently set up with work and everything that I have, being able to only get out on the weekends. And so it's awesome to see everybody's story. And again, you could take it to a completely different spectrum of those who traveled all over the world on different continents and go on full-blown several month-long trips and things like that. So really, at the end of the day, it's, I guess, what speaks to you. And some of those channels have definitely been pretty big motivators for me. And as far as current life goals go, I would say to just get out and travel more. To be honest, I think that's what everybody wants. Weekends are great, but I would love to be able to have a little bit more vacation time and get out and do bigger trips. I would love to check off some of the bucket list areas of going up to Alaska and, you know, going to Denali, maybe summiting Denali or something like that, or even going to like Greenland or Iceland or Australia or anything like that. I would love to get out and utilize a lot of these companies that are really starting to be recognized as far as overland vehicle rentals. You know, be able to save some time, fly out, have a fully capable rig and explore the area, but you don't have to worry about the time commitment of driving there yourself, or the expense of, you know, having a vehicle shipped to some of these places. So that's definitely on the list. I would love to make that happen. It's just obviously time and the resources have to line up, and we'll make that happen one of these days. But a lot will be announced if that is in the card, so stay tuned in that regard. Let's see here. Steve, he asks, what equipment do you use? Camera, laptop, editing, software, drone, and other production equipment. So with that, we mentioned a lot as far as the camera, drones, and action cameras and all that good stuff. What I do use as far as the laptop is a MacBook Pro. Everything as far as the editing, even trip research, all that stuff, I do it all on the laptop. I like to be mobile. So it's nice in that regard to be able to have things on the go, especially if I need to take it with me on trips to offload footage and whatnot. So that is one of the big tools that I utilize on a daily basis. Besides the cameras and everything, I do use a dedicated microphone for a lot of the voiceovers stuff that I incorporate in videos. So I have like it's right beside me here, the Shure KSM 32, that microphone. It's sitting on a stand with like a little vocal booth around it just to help with noise absorption and things like that, so you don't have some of the reverb sound. But that microphone, it's been great. I have that plugged into an audio interface of a Focusrite. It's just like a 2-channel audio interface, and basically that connects via USB to the computer, and then that way you can get some really good quality voiceover audio. And again, I do it all literally right here in my little home office, so it's not an exuberant type of setup by any means. It's not like a multi-$1,000 studio recording booth, but it gets the job done, and it serves purposes for what I need. So it's great in that regard. But otherwise, I would say that's really it as far as the equipment goes. And again, it's all been built on what I found that I've needed, or growing on tools that I didn't have from before. But again, it's always seeing what you can utilize with what you have to help tell the story of what you're trying to convey. Our next question from DJ Emma, they ask, what is your favorite place to visit in the Pacific Northwest? We touched on that one a little bit, but I would say, again, the Olympic Peninsula it's a great spot year round. There's so much to see out there any time of the year, from the low, right at the coast on the sea level to all the way up into the mountains. It's definitely my favorite spot, and there's a lot of good places out there to explore. So routinely why I see a lot of the episodes over in that direction. Luke also asks, where did you have your bumper light setup installed, or did you do it yourself? So we mentioned that also a little earlier. Mule Expedition Outfitters, they've done all the work on the vehicle. They've been able to help assist with getting everything done, and honestly, I just don't have the time or resources to do it myself, so I rather leave it to the pros to make sure it's done right the first time. And they've been a great company to work with, and they've been able to help bounce some ideas off of how I want to build the vehicle and offer suggestions that I may have overlooked, but nonetheless, they've been a great company to help me out, and it's awesome to see their success too. I remember even their store has grown tenfold from the time that I've brought my vehicle to them. And this has been a relationship that's gone on for years. So awesome crew up there. So anybody in the Washington or even Oregon area out in Portland, they do have a second location in Tualatin. So if you're looking to get work done, that might be a great spot to kind of check out. But otherwise, guys, that was the last question. And with that, I just wanted to thank you all for sticking around this long as far as for our first Q&A episode here. It's great to kind of showcase and share some of the behind the scenes stuff and be able to share with you guys what I do on a daily basis, or even what gear makes these videos and adventures possible. Even in addition with that, our Patreon folks, I want to give you a special thanks. I sincerely appreciate all your guys' support. You guys really have helped keep the channel going by being able to take those dollars and reinvest it back in. I mean, being able to exactly do what I've done, purchase another camera to help with the next level of content with production, or being able to take those dollars and expand our merch lineup, or even more so, be able to help mitigate some of the costs with gas and food. I mean, that adds up quite a bit, more than you realize, trying to get out on the every weekend basis. So I sincerely appreciate all your guys' support. It really means a lot, and it helps to keep the channel alive and growing. So with that, you guys, I appreciate you guys sticking around. Wish you all the best, and let's do this again. I will definitely be having these more frequently as time goes on. But with that, hope you guys are all doing well and have a great weekend. And until next time, safe travels.